When building out our Spring Boot project, we may need to configure beans that are specific to our application. In this situation, it's not reasonable to expect Spring Boot to auto-configure these new beans. As a developer, it's our responsibility to specify the configuration for those beans using the Java or XML configuration provided by Spring. In this lesson, we'll take a look at how you can include configuration for those beans within your Spring Boot project. To get started, we're going to navigate to the Package Explorer and we will create a new class within our com.o'reilly.boot package. To do that, hit Ctrl-N to open the new dialog and type class. And you'll notice that we are building a Java class, and this class will contain our configuration for the custom beans for our project. Now, this is because Spring Boot prefers to work with Java configuration, and that's the preferred approach from the folks at Spring. So we'll go ahead and build out our new class. We'll name it My Configuration, and then I'll simply hit the Finish button. And this will build out our new class. Within this class, we will provide the configuration of different beans we would like to see in our Spring IOC container. The first thing we'll do within our configuration class is add the configuration annotation, and this indicates that our class will declare several bean methods that will then be used to create beans that are put within our IOC container. So we'll add the bean annotation to a method that returns a string, and we'll just name this method message, and we'll import the bean annotation, and then we'll simply return our string. So what we're going to have happen here is we're going to create a new bean within the IOC container that is of type string, and it has the value of Hello O'Reilly. So we have some very simple Java configuration here, and it declares a bean. Now what we're going to do is we're going to include this configuration within our Spring Boot project and our Spring application. And the way we can do that is by using the import annotation that's provided by Spring. And that annotation requires us to specify a type. So we point to our configuration class, and that allows us to include that configuration within our application. That allows us to auto-wire our bean into our application class. So I'll add the auto-wired annotation, and then we'll create a new field message, and that bean will be auto-wired to our string message, and then we're simply going to return our message within our REST controller. And if we relaunch our Spring Boot application, you'll see that we are going to reference our external configuration when we visit our REST controller and its endpoint. So there's Hello O'Reilly, and that came from our My Configuration class, which we then auto-wired the message bean into our application and then returned its value from our request mapping, our method that was mapped to our controller method, and that allowed us to provide a response to the end user. Now, this is very basic Java configuration. You're probably familiar with it. What we can also do is, if we had multiple configuration classes, we can add the component scan annotation, and what we can do there is, if we do not provide a path, it will just component scan from the class that contains the annotation. So here we would basically be starting from the root of our project, because this is the class that would have the component scan annotation, and it would scan this package as well as any other packages nested within it. So if we once again return to our application after we relaunch it, you'll see that we receive the same results as when we had manually imported the additional configuration. Now, what we'd like to take a look at is and a way we can simplify this configuration. So Spring Boot provides us with the Spring Boot application annotation, and this is a shortcut for specifying the auto configuration annotation, as well as the component scanning annotation and the configuration annotation. So it would be as if we added the configuration annotation, the enable auto configuration annotation, as well as the component scan annotation on our application type. So it's just a shortcut to specify all three of those annotations, and you'll see it used quite frequently because it's a very common task to do this. So let's go ahead and save our application. Now we can relaunch the app, and then we can navigate over to our browser. And once again, you'll see that the response provided by our REST controller is determined by the bean that was specified in our additional configuration. So you can also do this with an XML approach. We're not going to go into that because Java configuration is the preferred approach for Spring Boot. In this lesson, we learned how to include additional configuration for our application-specific beans and how to include them within our Spring Boot project to work along with auto configuration. And we learned this nifty method of using the Spring Boot application annotation to reduce some of our configuration. And you'll encounter this as you work with Spring Boot projects, so it's important to know what is really behind this annotation.